everyone, welcome. We're just waiting a few more minutes until other people join us, but welcome. Hi. Hello, everyone. Oh, I see some familiar faces. Hi, everyone. To anyone who's just joining us now, we're waiting for other people to come into the room. Give it another 30 seconds. Great. I think there are quite a few of us in here now, so maybe we'll make a start. Hi, everyone. I hope you can all hear me okay. Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It is evening here in London, and my name is Louisa Uliette, and I'm curator of talks and events at the Photographers Gallery. I'm excited to be here with Cristina de Middel, who is calling in from Madrid tonight, and the Photographers Gallery Director Brett Rogers, who will be chairing tonight's talk. She's actually just in the room next to me. Nominated for the Deutsche Börse Prize in 2013 and a Magnum Associate since 2017, Cristina de Middel's practice investigates photography's ambiguous relationship to truth. How do photographs impact our understanding of the world? Is there a definitive line to cross between documentary and conceptual photographic practice? Starting with Cristina's critically acclaimed series, The Afronauts, in 2012, before moving to more recent projects, she and Brett Rogers will explore these questions as we probe further into the evolving nature of the photographic image. After their presentation, we will move to questions and comments from you using either the chat feature here or the Zoom function that allows you to raise your hand electronically. We will unmute you so you can speak. The event should last roughly 1 hour. Please note that we are recording this, so if you do not wish to be featured, please turn off your camera. We are approaching this event in the same way we do all of our public programs, which is with the aim of creating a form of trust and mutual respect, so please keep that in mind. I hope today's discussion inspires you, and we look forward to seeing you again here during some of our other online activity, and even more hopefully in person at the gallery, which is now open. Thank you again for joining us, and now to Cristina and Brett.
Thank you, and a warm welcome to all of you. And I just want to extend my warm thanks to Cristina for agreeing to undertake this talk for the Photographers Gallery tonight. We grabbed Cristina while she was in Europe for 3 months. She now lives deep in the jungle in Brazil, and we know that the internet connection there is no good for talks like this. So she very willingly, in her very tight and intense schedule, made room for a talk with the Photographers Gallery. And we were so grateful because I'm sure, like many of you in the room tonight, you are familiar with some of Cristina's practice, especially the early Afronauts and perhaps the owl work that she showed Midnight at the Crossroads 2 years ago. But for me, I'm really looking forward to hearing more about her more recent series and what her plans are for the immediate future. So we've asked Cristina to start with a brief introduction to her practice, starting with her work as a photojournalist, going on to Afronauts, and then taking us through a couple of her series that she's done more recently. And after Cristina finishes that presentation, we'll have a conversation about the work. So Cristina, off you go, and warm welcome to all of us from here in London to you in Alicante, your hometown in Spain.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Brett, for the introduction, and thank you, Louisa. It's a huge pleasure to be back at the Photographers Gallery. That was the home where I started my international career, so there's a very strong link with you guys, and I'm very happy to be here, and that you give me some time to just upgrade the, the understanding that the British audience might have about my work, and I'm really thankful for that. So without further delay, if you don't mind, I will start sharing my screen, and I will start talking very quick, as you know, about my work and where I come from, what I did, like really the headlines of what happened, and we'll try to focus, as Brett said, in what I'm working on now. So let me share the screen. Okay. Okay. Here. So now comes when I start talking to myself, looking at my home screen. I'll be back in 20 minutes because you don't get to see the faces. So it's a very weird feeling. Anyway, so yes, I don't know how many of you know, but I started as a photojournalist, and I was a photojournalist for 10 years. And these images are not to just show or validate the kind of work that I used to do, but for me, they're important because it is the kind of work and the kind of photography against which I work. I try to react to that because I was a very different person, the Cristina that was taking these pictures, and the motivations she had and the understanding of the world and photography that she had when she was younger was very different to the one that I have now, that she has now, whatever. So these are the images I used to do for NGOs, Doctors Without Borders. And these are, of course, like the more exciting. But apart from that, I used to work in local newspapers, and my practice and all my knowledge and everything I know about photography, at least the technical part and the way how you move with a camera, comes from being a photojournalist. I've never been a conceptual photographer. I've never had a studio, and I've never had too much time to dedicate to the thinking part of photography. I just make, and then eventually I try to fit everything into a general idea. But my practice has nothing to do with conceptual photography, even if I'm labeled as a conceptual photographer, and I got nothing against it. But I love considering myself as a, I don't know, expanded documentary photographer or a visual storyteller. So basically, after 10 years doing these images, you know, it's like I wanted to be close to the human drama, like I guess most documentary photographers. I would repeat to myself that I wanted to change the world through photography, but at some point, and with various episodes in this attempt, I realized that if I really wanted to change the world, or I wanted to help someone, traveling around the world with a camera, spending a lot of money in fixers and airplane tickets to take photos for a couple of days or for a couple of weeks, to come back to Spain, edit them, sell them in a newspaper or a magazine so that somebody could look at them published, and then that person would eventually change the world or donate to an NGO that could have a direct impact on the drama that I was addressing, was not a very good strategy. So I decided to move on and to be coherent with the certainty that came to me that if I wanted to change the world, I first needed to change photography in order to do that. So you cannot change the world with photography unless you change photography before. And that's what I've been trying to do all these days, all these years, all these days too, but all these years, especially since 2010, when I quit the newspaper and I started generating the content and the stories that I found missing in the media. The kind of stories that I would be very happy to consume myself as a reader, and that I could not find. I was missing plenty of angles, I was missing plenty of perspective and content, and I had the feeling that the world has been explained to me with the same words / images and from the same angle over and over again. So basically fighting against that, it's what I've been doing. And I started with Africa because it's probably one of the continents in which photography has done the worst job ever, because there is millions and trillions of images of Africa, but there is still very little and very incomplete understanding of the complexity and the many layers there is in the continent. For example, we have no idea of what the middle class in Africa looks like, or what a bank looks like, or what an office looks like. And there are offices and banks and middle class in Africa. So photography has not been very successful in making us understand what the continent is like. And in that mood and in that world of ideas, it's how I found the story of the Afronauts. I'm pretty sure that you're familiar with the series. I have explained it so many times. So I will leave it to the questions in the end. If you have any specific question, I guess you might have with the book. But all in all, what I did is to try to show and to visualize the lack of faith and the lack of expectations we have towards the continent. I found this story about a space program that started in 1964 that was not successful, but that is just an African anecdote. What struck me is my own reaction towards the idea of an African space program. To me, it was impossible. Had it been a Dutch space program or a German or a Swedish space program, even a Spanish space program, why not? It wouldn't have sounded something crazy. But because it was African, I myself would not just believe it. I thought it was some sort of Foncuberta's project that he had put somewhere on YouTube. And the fact that even if I had all my alarms set to avoid this type of prejudice, I was even falling into that. So the way that I found to make clear that point, to share that point of view, that the level of expectations we have towards the continent is very low. What I decided to do is to put all the stereotypes and the cliches together to the maximum intensity, like everything that is so African, that it's so African, it's not even African. That's what I do. And I mixed the cliches that we consume all, we've been consuming all, and we all know about Africa and about the space race. Maybe none of us has been to Africa. Certainly none of us has been to the space, but we still have a sort of a very well documented visual library about Africa and the space race. So I just use these icons, these stereotypes, and yes, reductions of reality to make clear how reality is actually reduced to a few cliches. So this is, I mean, the series, it was very playful for me. It was like an open window in my mind, because I was really starting to feel a little bit trapped in the documentary language, especially in the newspapers. I'm sure you're familiar with the series. I had the huge honor to be one of the finalists of the Deutsche Börse in 2013. And the first time this was shown in public was at the Photographers Gallery, and I couldn't imagine a best start for that. I was very young and inexperienced, and I learned a lot in the last 8 years. But one of the things that I think is more relevant for me now, and I look at this series, maybe I wouldn't do it in the same way. There is lots, I don't think I would dare to do this series now because of context, for sure. And but I think that is an interesting reflection, and something that if you're open to discussion, we can discuss later. But just small details and anecdotes. For example, it was not only about Africa and what happened to Africa and what we expect about Africa, but also about how you can play with photography and how you can use the camera and photography beyond the limitations and the boundaries that the market and the popes have projected on the tool. To me, it was something like I really needed to explore that. And for example, I needed something floating in the air, like a flying saucer. And instead of photoshopping, that I'm not very good at, I just took a picture of something that was floating in a lake. So if you do 80%, 180 turn, it becomes something flying. And this is the type of manipulation I would do, having a lot of fun with it. And yes, there is lots of lessons about the Afronauts, especially for me. It's a project that changed my life, as you know, because in 2012 I published the book of the Afronauts, and it became a phenomenon. I think because it was not very easy to get, because I was not prepared at all. And Martin Parr said it was the best book of 2012. And then you press the fast forward button, and here I am talking to a screen for 30 minutes. So I'm happy to see all the details about that, but I wanted to jump to like Yes, I mean, if I talked about Africa from a very deliberately superficial angle, because I wanted to bring to the surface the superficiality of the understanding we have of Africa, there was an evolution in my way of working in Africa, and not only in Africa, but in my way of presenting the otherness and presenting and addressing stories and realities that are not necessarily in my own genetic programming. I don't. But for example, the last one Brett mentioned, it is an exhibition I had together with my husband. We worked together on this series called Midnight at the Crossroads, and it's totally the opposite of the Afronauts. In the intention, and also maybe not that much in the output, because we have a style. I have a style, and we created some sort of imagery that we're comfortable with. But in this case, we really want people to understand better something about Africa. And we talk from a point of view that is maybe more legitimate, and there is a proper research. At this point is when I say that my husband, Bruno Borais, is Afro-descendant, and he lives in Brazil. And I was maybe more aware of the reality in Africa. He had never been there, but I had no idea of the reality in Brazil. But basically what we do in this series is to follow the path of one of the spirits in the Yoruba, in the African rooted religion that traveled with the slaves. And it was a spirit that was immediately syncretized, assimilated to the devil, because it's the spirit of free will and the spirit that will, confuse your senses and make you doubt, so you can take the control of your life. Of course, taking the control of your life is not something that the slave traders wanted to propose to the slaves at all. So yes, it was immediately understood, assimilated to something evil and bad. So we did this journey from Benin, that is the sort of Vatican of voodoo. From Benin, there is the symbols, there is an attempt of explaining what it looks like, also what the ceremonies are like, what the rituals are like. This is like a mix of documentary and interpretation of the legends and so on, explaining the sort of universe in a visual translation of it, but very open-ended, because that's how things work in Africa. And with this type of religion, there is no book, so everything's are just subject to interpretation. Then he moves to, the spirit goes to Cuba, where it's a child, and there is lots of beautiful legends. I don't know if you saw the show. We just launched the second edition of the book. We can talk about that later too. And so it goes from Benin to Cuba. Then it arrives in Rio, where he's a young man. That is a shape that the spirit takes, and is really like the devil, with everything that the devil has. And then finally, it arrives in Haiti, where it's an old man. And so it's this circle of life where it has no human shape. From there, it goes to a child, to a grown-up man, to an old man. And then in Haiti, there is this belief that when you die, you go back to a place called Guinea, that is like paradise. So in the end, it's like a circle that goes back to the beginning, because when people die in Haiti and they belong to the voodoo religion, they go back to Guinea, that is Africa. It's an idealized version of Africa. So yes, there is an interesting structure in this book, because in this project, because we follow the same structure in all the countries. So you can actually see the four things, the four places together and understand the structure. This is a preview of the book. And again, I push the fast forward button. And these are the 14 books that I published since the Afronauts. Since then, I've really, for me, each project and each book is made to share something, but it's basically to share my own questions. Some I get an answer, some I get even more questions. So it's really not books and projects that are meant to help understanding anything. It's just maybe to be able to ask better questions so we can eventually understand better the world we live in and use photography in a more efficient way. I've talked about the Arctic, about the favelas in Rio, about communism in China, about spams, about violence in Mexico, about jungle in Mexico, about musicals, New York, masculinity in India, and about chaos also. So these are the subjects that I've been addressing, and everything is very chaotic, I know. All this was done in 8 years, because I think what my strategy was when I did the Afronauts and I got all that attention, to me, the only thing I could do is to run away forward, sort of escape from that, not escape, but just try not to look back and not to think too much. You know, when you finish something, you sit and you look at your creation. I just did that during the lockdown in the pandemic after 8 years, and it's been amazing. But I had never really had the time or the intent of analyzing my work looking backwards. And now, after the fast forward, you see a little bit the dimension of the speed and the activity I've had during these years. There is, of course, many things happening in between one and the other. But I wanted to show to you what two of the projects that I'm working on now. I'm working on several projects. I always do that. It's always like 3 or 4 projects going on at the same time, because I get bored with working just with one. And the two that are more like advanced is one is called Gentleman's Club, and it has no magic. It has no staging. It's really pure, 100% pure Leica documentary photographer. So what I did is, I mean, when I go back to what I wanted to do with photography is change photography. One of the important aspects of it was trying to fill the gaps that for me were missing. Just like I said, that we have no clear visual understanding of what a middle class in Africa looks like. There is several subjects that photography have been addressing over and over from the same angle again, normally the white man's angle, but this is another subject. But for example, there is romantic topics like prostitution that almost every photographer has taken, documentary photographer has taken pictures of some sort of brothels at some point in their career. And to me, what is funny is that if you go to Google Images, for example, that is a nice way to understand how visually a subject is represented and understood by the big audience. And you type prostitution or sexual work, to be correct, maybe the first 100,000 million pages will show images of women, most of them naked, most of them in dirty rooms. When we all know that prostitution and sexual work is not only about women staying like posing naked in rooms, it involves someone else. Guess what? A man in most of the cases, but you never get to see him. So it's this lack of representation of the client was very annoying for me. And I decided to do something about it and try to put some balance in the visual representation of a topic that is so popular like prostitution. And I tried, and I started more like a joke to myself. I put an ad in a newspaper in Rio, asking for prostitute clients who would be willing to pose for me in exchange of money. I thought nobody would understand, but Latin America is amazing. That's why I live there. And to my surprise, lots of people replied. And it was the beginning of a project that I started in 2015 and that I've been doing in many other places. So what I do is I take, we go together, I meet the man. It's normally 10 to 12 men in every city, and the cities are chosen according to the relation they have to sexual work. Sometimes a very romantic relationship like Paris, and you have Le Moulin Rouge and all these women that are, you know, and Toulouse-Lautrec, this romantic representation of sexual work. Rio, of course, you have this tradition of the mulata prostitute. I also went to Havana, to Cuba, and I was asking people when was their first time, how was their first experience, how much they paid, how often do they go, how much they pay, and why do they think it exists, and if they had an opinion about it. So yes, it's an interesting process also because it's a portrait and it's a very tense situation for me. So yes, I don't know why I do these things, but I just do it. In Paris, for example, it's a criminal offense to pay for sex. So it's the clients who would go to jail if they get caught. So yes, I had to hide their identity. And of course, they are much more elaborate in their explanation because they're French and they love listening to themselves. Yes, this in Bangkok, of course, that is one of the capitals of sexual tourism. And there I had to stay a little bit longer because I really wanted to show white people, like sexual tourists in Bangkok. And it was not that easy to convince them. I do not really convince them. I really explain everything and they sign a model release and I'm super aware of the situation. I hope no. I know maybe the question I'm getting asked all the time is how I know that these people, that these men actually did pay for sex and they're not lying to me. And the answer I give, that it's just if any of you in the audience is willing to ask me that, I will just anticipate the question. The answer is that how do I know that the women that pose in all these romantic documentaries and reportages there is about prostitution are really prostitutes or they're just women who need the money? So the question goes in both directions. And just to finish, I wanted to show you the last project that I've been working on. After I moved to Mexico in 2014, and I've been there for, I think my heart and my mind are still there because I love the country very much. But it's a bit difficult for a Spanish person to talk about Mexico, especially in these times where legitimacy and point of speech is very studied and controlled because we have a history in Mexico as Spanish people and we owe them a lot of gold. So it is very sensitive to like yes, the work of a Spanish photographer is complicated in Mexico. But to me, it took me some time to find something that I really could have a strong opinion about. And it all happened sort of, yes, with the migration and with all the, with the first caravans, I found finally an angle that I thought I could navigate easily and that I found quite funny and interesting at the same time. And it's basically the point of the part of that is the orange man that is the president of the United States, who was saying all the time that the migrants were criminals and bad hombres and rapists and so on. When my experience and my knowledge with the migrants that travel across Mexico, to me, and knowing what the country is like and how dangerous it is and how amazing it is, it has, I mean, they're really like heroes. So trying to shift that perception from criminals to heroes is the final goal of this project. And I use several tools like assimilating the journey to an adventure or heroic jest or big journey like Journey to the Center of the Earth. And so I've tried, once I had this structure clear in my mind, and I will explain to you why I chose this book at the end of everything. But what I've been doing is working around more conceptually around the idea of migration, like the monarch butterflies that are natural migrants. Every year they go from Canada to Mexico to mate, and then they go back to put the eggs back in Canada. Then, of course, there is a mix between more conceptual work, like the one I just saw, but also real documentary because it's something real. So I was traveling and I was riding in the train, the Beast, where that all the migrants work. So there is this balance between something very magical and onirical with something that is very harsh. And that is the kind of work that I love doing now, that you don't know how to react and you go from being very excited or loving the image to being scared, to being disgusted, to feel pity, to feel sorry, etc., etc. Not trying to complicate the feelings and the emotional readings of emotional reactions of the audience with each image. So Mexico is presented as a very dangerous but beautiful country, and that is 100% true. I try again to play around the stereotypes and the cliches of Mexico in a funny, scary, irreverent way. I mean, it's agaves, the Volkswagen cars, the cactus, references to people getting lost in the desert. There was a lot of documentation, then putting together the extremes, more documentary. I'm still working on this. I still need to go one more time to Mexico and work hard for a couple of months before I have all the images that I have in mind. These, for example, they're called the patrona. So it's a type of, they work like the sirens in a way, and they give free food to the people who ride on the train. It's an NGO that has been working for 40 years. And there's the Good Samaritans who leave gallons of water in the desert so the migrants can have more chances to survive the crossing. The double reading there is on family unity in the United States, where they are separating families at the border and children from their parents, but at the same time celebrating Thanksgiving and the value of family. Well, the border and the fence, that is ridiculous. And I can go on and on. Like in Mexico, you can find a dog with a jacket. That is not staged, it is like that. And if you're familiar with the book by Jules Verne, you know that in the center of the earth, you have dinosaurs, you have huge mushrooms and huge plants, which for me has a lot to do with the United States. So the United States is presented as the center of the world. And I will explain to you why, but just on the more documentary side, this, for example, is the medical examiners of a county in Arizona that is in charge of collecting the DNA of all the bodies they find in the desert of those immigrants that do not make it. And he collects this sort of DNA. He has a DNA archive with all the remains of the people he finds, their team finds. So, I mean, of course, there is this irreverence towards the crossing, presenting them as performers and people who really have very strong skills and are very well prepared to cross, and also with the sense of humor that, you know, is very important. And the center of the world actually is in the United States, but it's not something that is a conceptual construction. On the contrary, it's actually the real center of the world. It exists in California. And now I'm going to tell you the most amazing, not the most amazing, okay, it's the most amazing anecdote in my life. And it is in 2015, after attending Paris Photo LA, I had like 10 days free and I decided to rent a car and drive across the border and just along the border. And driving towards Arizona because I wanted to reach a place called Y. So this is like the kind of trips that I love taking. And on the way to Y, I find this place that is called Felicity, and it's the official center of the world. So I arrive in the place and I see a granite pyramid, and it's a very weird construction in the middle of the desert. And from there you can actually see the fence of that separates to Mexico. And I arrived there and there is this Japanese woman who is with a broom and asked me, hello, welcome to Felicity, the center of the world. Do you want to know more about this place? And I say, yes, please. So she takes me to a room with 4 chairs, a TV and a VHS player, like a tape player. And she plays the button, she pushes the button, and it's a 15-minute presentation of the place. And they explain that there is this man, a French ex-member of the Legion, Légion Française, who realized that the world had no center. So he buys a piece of land in the US and starts making this like officially like the center of the world that we didn't have, and we have thanks to him, which is already a crazy idea. But what is even more crazy is that in the end, the state of California makes it official. So it is official, it is the center of the world. And you go there and you stand on top of a bronze stone on the ground. They give you a diploma that you were at center of the world. So I was like quite impressed with the place. And I find it also very funny that it's a French person who decides where the center of the world is, and they decide it's in the US. So from a person from Spain that we're really in the tail of the importance in the countries, it was like, wow, these people, they really think they're in the center of the world. And actually, this is a man, and this is a Japanese woman. He's the mayor of Felicity, this type of place that I went to. And the funny thing is that I leave the room and I see this man in front of me and say, "Oh, welcome to Felicity. I was carrying my camera," and says, "Do you know that you need permission to take photos?" And I say, "No, I didn't know, but where can I get permission?" He says, "I give permission." It's like, okay, then I can take photos. And he says, "Do you know Henri Cartier-Bresson?" And I say, "Not personally, but yes, I know who he is." It's like, "You need to know then that I bought this piece of land when I was doing a road trip with his sister." So basically, this man decided where the center of the world was when he was doing a road trip with Cartier-Bresson's sister. And I think, yes, so I was quite impressed with that. And this is my story. I don't know if
what a story that is. And thank you so much, Cristina, for making a very rapid whistle-stop tour through your career since 2012.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to consume too much time for people's questions, but let me ask you a few questions. Mm-hmm. Now, looking back, it's nearly a decade since the Afronauts was published, and you might just show everybody the book whilst you've got there. What do you think really was, with hindsight, the reason why it had that incredible impact it did at the time? I always wonder if it was because it was at that point, it was the epitome of self-publishing and what is possible on a very modest budget, because of course you've got to remind everybody how unpretentious and affordable the book was for you to produce. And also, of course, it was one of the first self-published books that successfully combined fiction and reality in such a surprising way. You glossed over the fact that there were lots of newspaper clippings, ephemera, letters in there, as well as your own photographs. So now looking back over a decade, apart from Martin Parr giving it a push, why do you think it's maintained its status as one of the great self-published photo books of all time?
I think there is a combination of factors. I don't think the book is that good. I think I've done better books since then. Okay. But there is a combination of, there is this magical expectation about Africa. And it's maybe quite, we all have like a sort of mystical relationship to Africa, to our roots and so on. So Africa here is presented in a very special way that I was not even aware of. Mm-hmm. And that is regarding the images that are still being very popular. But regarding the book, I think Martin Parr played an important role, and also my total misunderstanding of the market, because I was selling it at almost, I was losing money. Every time I sold the book, I was losing money.
Oh, okay.
Because I was giving the shipping for free, because I was so grateful that people would buy the book. I would tell them, "Don't worry, I pay for the shipping. I pay for the shipping." And eventually, I was really losing money with the books until eventually they sold out, of course. So.
And yet, you've never agreed to a reprint for very good reasons that you might share with us all.
No, but I did reprint. There is actually now. There's we just sold out the third edition of it.
Oh, okay.
Last year, because it was the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, and I think we want to publish it again.
Okay.
But I think we sold the last one yesterday or something like that.
Again.
There's been 3 reprints, and the PDF is free to download. I'm going to put all my PDFs also free to download. I mean, I'm not precious about that, because it's a market that I don't really understand. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Okay. So you have you've attempted in your talk to outline some of the shortcomings that you saw in your position as a photojournalist. And yet, as all of us know, you've joined the epitome of the photojournalist agency, Magnum, in 2017. And so, how do you align both those things, and how do you make all that balance? Because it is the epitome of the concerned photographer and those values that I thought had gone on to reject.
I mean, I am a photographer that has also values and that is committed to her work. It's not that I play around and I take photography very seriously. I just have a different approach to photography and to the human drama. I don't believe in straight documentary, by itself. I think it's necessary, but it needs the help of opinion. It's just like in a newspaper, you have the news and you have the articles, or the opinion articles.
Yeah.
And that is the right balance. You have the facts and you have an interpretation of the facts that make you understand better what happened the day before. So in photography, I think we should have that. And I'm just here giving my opinion. I'm not trying to convince anyone. I just want to give my opinion. And regarding Magnum, I think Magnum has been, I mean, I'm sure you know much more about Magnum than I do, because I'm a newcomer and I never really deeply studied it. But if you see how it started, there's always been like two families or two energies, let's call it like that. You have the straight documentary, the photojournalists, and the artists. And it's like the two sections. You have the French and the Americans and the British, and then within them you have the artists and the photojournalists, or the more documentary ones. And I think what works well with Magnum is that there is a very well defined balance between these families, either territorially or conceptually. I am, of course, part of the artist family, but it doesn't mean there is a fight at all with other photographers. I think it's a very fertile dialogue, very interesting. I mean, you get used to it. I remember the first time when I joined Magnum, maybe it was a Tuesday or a Saturday.
Yeah.
Monday, I received an email from Abbas.
The Iranian photographer. Wow.
And it was like, oh my God. He was super nice to me, super nice. It's actually, I mean, I'm very happy that I have this email and I treasure it. It's like very short, like, hi, Cristina. I know you are now part of Magnum, but I wanted to know why you want to be in Magnum, why you are in Magnum, if Magnum is all about documentary and you are all about fiction. And that was the first time that I had to articulate for myself and also for others why I think I should be there. Also, and it was very helpful for me. And I told him more or less what I just explained. But also, if you look in the archives of Magnum, there is photographers who have done things that are much more irreverent to documentary that I have done. Much more. You just need to go and look. and there is people who have done things that are much worse than what I did.
And you find there's no conflict between the commercial projects and your personal projects? You can do both at the same time?
Yes, for me, it's also, for me, it's a way of understanding the world. Of course, I wouldn't like to be doing only commercial things because it would be boring. I wouldn't like to do that. I wouldn't like to be doing only my personal projects because I would lose the link to reality. And I would lose the link to the audience in a way. So for me, it's all a question of balance.
Yeah. Now, everything we've discussed tonight, every journey and everything that's been very characteristic of your career has involved a journey, a very interesting journey generated by your curiosity and your commitment and your passion and also your energy. But the other day you mentioned to me that you feel as though perhaps you're coming out of being a photojournalist and going into more of a field of visual activism. Now, that's a term that's very much associated with the new generation, especially of women photographers, like Zanelli Maholi and Latoya Ruby Fraser. Can you talk a little bit about how you might see your work fitting into that sort of more visual activism mode?
Well, I think it's not visual activism in terms of printing your pictures or printing like a billboard and go to the street and go to demonstrations. I've never been that kind of activist, but I like studying and understanding how the world is presented to us, who is presenting it to us, and how it is being presented. And I think young photographers and non-white photographers and non-male photographers have a very, very important role and a very, very big responsibility now. You cannot just pretend that we need more, that we need to redefine the world according to our own points of view. The world has been explained to us from the white male's perspective, which is fine, but it's not the only perspective there is. So we really need to get like, to roll our sleeves and start like filling the gaps there is. I would love to see what a Mexican transgender thinks of refugees in Myanmar. Also, why do Mexican transgenders need to talk about transgender and being Mexican? I miss the opinion of other people, and I'm tired of listening to the opinion of white men. So in terms of that, I try to be opinionated, and I try to force my opinion everywhere I go.
But Cristina, you do work in collaboration often with partners, like your partner Bruno. So perhaps you just explain a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Bruno he's a man. He's not white, so it's okay. It's not the most evil of evil. No, for me it is. I mean, I have a lot of fun working. I mean, not fun. I work very hard, but I enjoy a lot working and creating things and creating realities and creating things that didn't exist, a story that didn't exist. I love, it's a process that I love and that I have a lot of fun and enjoy very much. And I enjoy it so much that sometimes I need to share it. It's like if you have a toy and you need to share it.
Yes.
And when you share it with someone that understands you and you understand, it's actually quite a very interesting experience. I've already worked with Kalev Eriksson from the Archive of Modern Conflict.
That's
I work with my friends.
Yeah.
I work
with Bruno and in the show and Arl, you both took the images, but you didn't claim authorship. So it was just presented as a joint project. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, and now we're working on our third project together. It is difficult. It is difficult because it is difficult. I won't get into detail, but it is not an easy thing. It's a process, a very intense learning process. Let's put it this way.
And of course, you are dealing with mostly with subjects that are from very different backgrounds and geographical situations from your own, from Benin to Mexico to, everywhere, Nigeria. So how does it feel when you put yourself into the position, and how do you deal with the ethics in inhabiting the creation of another person or somebody from those cultures?
Well, I think this is like a reconfiguration that is happening now. We still don't have the new rules. We still don't have the new set of rules. If I had to write the rules, I would totally prioritize other voices and especially not stop paying attention to the same epicenter of the news. I would shut down the US. Don't listen to the US anymore. Can we do that for 3 months, please? But that is, in a way, I think we would lose a lot if it's only people from the place that can talk about their place. I think opinion, maybe you're not authorized. You shouldn't be telling the truth about something you don't understand or something that is not yours. But I think you should be able to give your opinion as long as you present it as your opinion. It's what I said again. For me, it would be amazing to have the opinion on the war in Syria of a 40-year-old white woman from South Africa. Why not? Why don't we have that opinion? I want to know it. I want to know what they think about it.
And one thing you bring to all your projects, I don't know if there's one project that hasn't had this, is the humor. Why is humor and parody so important to you, do you think?
Because otherwise it would be so, it would take me so much energy to pretend that I'm someone else all the time.
Oh.
I just found it's like, okay, I use irony and I use sarcasm in everyday life. It's the way I communicate, and I really fought very hard to have my, what I say to you now talking in a conversation and what I say with my work being the same person speaking. So if I am humoristic and I don't make silly jokes, I try to work with irony and ask questions and so on. That's how I am as a person, and I think my work needs to be like that. I couldn't do it differently.
Okay, I'm going to move to questions in a minute, but can I just ask you one last question from me? I didn't realize till I was reading about your work today how influenced by film you are, and how, if you had the money and the time, you would really be interested in filmmaking. Is there something you're dying to do and to make in moving image form? Because we've never really seen anything except your lovely digital work that you put on your web. Anything that you've done with moving image?
Well, I have been, if I had a limited budget and limited time and making movies would just involve 2 or 3 people, I would already have done plenty of movies. But it's this huge teamwork and the big responsibility and the weight of a production that scares me a little bit. But I am doing a movie now.
What?
Yes, I'm doing the movie of the Afronauts. French script writer, and I mean we're pitching it now. We're finishing actually this weekend. We're finishing the pitch, and hopefully it will happen.
Now, listen, I do hope your grandmother's making the costumes, because I always remember you telling me that your grandmother made those costumes.
Yes, I mean she's dead now.
Oh,
but I inherited her skills, so I can do the costumes.
that is wonderful. Now I have to really move to the questions. Now, somebody is asking about black and white. What is your criteria for when choosing to take your photographs regarding black and white or color? Does the journalistic storytelling, fictional matter influence these decisions? Thank you, Annabelle.
Yes, I think I use either black and white or color. Just for example, in the Journey to the Center, the migration one, I started making a difference between what is documentary, and I made it in black and white, and the rest in color. But I think I will put everything in color in the end. It's a work in process. But to me, I'm more interested in the meaning of black and white and how people consume a black and white image than the aesthetical part of it or all the intellectual approach to what is black and white and what is color. One is more.
Well, do you share that view that it's sort of associated with the humanistic photography?
I don't know. I think black and white photography is totally overrated, but maybe I say it because I'm not good at black and white photography.
Okay, so somebody wants to know about how you approach your subjects as an outsider. Perhaps the Gentlemen's Club people they might be talking about, but I'm not quite sure. But please answer.
I mean, as an outsider, I'm always an outsider because I never talk about myself in the work. I've never done a project about myself. So every project that I've done, to a certain degree, I am an outsider. There is different degrees, of course, but for example, in Gentlemen's Club, it might sound a bit difficult to just find these men and talk to them. But what I do, it is so difficult that I do it direct.
Yeah, you advertise for them and you do pay them, don't you?
I do pay them, and there is a very interesting moment where, because we go to these rooms, and there is a moment where I've already taken their pictures and I've already recorded the interview, and there's a moment where they stay in the room and I give the money and I leave.
How odd, reversing the whole thing.
I love it.
Absolutely. How strange that must be.
That's when they realize that they have just actually done the same thing as the girls do.
Yeah. So Sonia has asked, could you comment on if you think photojournalism has changed in the past few decades, and if so, why and how? Do you think the casualization of news imagery with its integration into social media has increased or reduced its importance? There's a big question.
Oh my God, I need to do a PhD on photography to answer that question.
But she's saying, you were disillusioned with photojournalism 12 years ago. Yes. Do you think it's changed? Is it addressed any of the problems you're concerned with?
Yeah, I totally, it has changed. And also the expectations we have towards photojournalism have changed. When I started, I wanted to be a war photographer, and it made sense, but then you realize how the world has changed and how the media have changed. And even if your intention is good, the outlet you're using is not good anymore, so your intentions are useless. So it has changed because I think photography has evolved and the media have evolved, and we've lost virginity, and we're not naive anymore, and we're not neutral anymore, and we realize the power of the image and the power of information and how this is politicized. So now we need to educate ourselves when we consume images.
Visual literacy has become more important.
Totally. It's one for me. It's the first thing. If I was the president of the world, first thing I would do is to add visual literacy as a mandatory thing to study in school.
Yeah. And social media influence? Any notes?
Yes. I mean, also. I don't know. I think I understand the world now much better through social media. It's easier to understand it like that because you get to see the layers. Like you get on one side the newspapers that are so serious and pretending to be serious, and then you get the reality. It's very funny to see the picture of a demonstration or the footage from someone in the demonstration where you see 20 other photographers taking the same picture.
Right. Okay. So from that point of view, you like that variety of viewpoints. Okay. Right. It's more comment. This is a comment from Patricia. I understand fully your love of Mexico. I love it myself. Ooh. I love it myself. Looking at your work, I think you managed to capture much of its visual identity. That's just somebody expressing their pleasure at your Mexican work. You spoke about sharing your opinion, your interpretations of the world. I would like to know, what are your strategies to communicate that message? What are your priorities, the representation of your subjects, your relationship with them, or the way your projects are presented to the public? We haven't talked about that. I mean, books are very important, but let's just, please do answer Camilla's question, but something we haven't had a chance to talk about today, which is so impressive, is the way you always present your exhibitions in gallery situations, how excited you are about subverting the usual conventions. So, but what is, you better go back to this. How would, what is the most important to communicate the strategy of what you're doing?
I think, I don't know, it's a difficult question. I mean, it's everything and it's nothing. I think it's maybe one thing that I could say at this point is that I really don't want, and I don't intend to have my opinion being more important than anybody else's opinion. I might be more eloquent in expressing what I want to say, because I've been doing photography for many years, but that doesn't mean that my opinion is better than others or more valid than others at all. It would be a failure for me if that was understood like that. I also like to keep in mind all the time that what I do is just photographs. Just photograph. That's what I do. Now we are in a moment of pandemic where people are dying, people are having this perspective crisis on their own lives, most of them, because we're facing like very big things going on in front of us. And you realize at that time, sorry. Oh, no, it's fine. You realize at that time that your work is totally unnecessary. What we do is not important, and that is the magic of it. And I love doing some things that are not important. I think everybody should be doing things that are not important every day. So I like to keep that in mind, and my opinion changes depending on the subject. In some cases, it is very positions, like in regards to women and the representation of women. I can get a bit stubborn and overexcited, depending my point of view. But in other place, I mean, I live in Mexico. That's what I think of Mexico. You don't agree? Go and shoot some more and make your own project about Mexico.
Well, somebody has asked, what sort of advice would you give for someone who's doing a master's in photography and wants to follow steps similar to yours? What is one thing you would advise?
My advice would be to spend all the money they've spent in the masters and spend it on making a good project and a good book. That's my advice.
Focused on a project they're passionate about. Is that right?
I think, yes, I think I was very lucky to have started in a moment where learning and photography was not an academic thing.
Yeah,
it was a lot of studies, but it was not what it is now. And many times when I do workshops and things like that, I am confronted to people who really have a very elaborate discourse, conceptual discourse, when they have not even taken the camera and they have not even started shooting. Yeah. So my career was all about learning in the process and making a lot of mistakes. So I'm a bit shocked when all this happens.
And just on that we're going to end on a more serious note, because of course I did forewarn you that we might get a question about Magnum. So I don't know who the question comes from, but how can people still call Magnum photographers concerned in light of the scandals around David Allen Harvey?
People can call Magnum whatever they want. That is point number one. And point number two, Magnum has, counting the members and everything, active members, almost 50 active members of different ages, different gender, different races, different sexual orientations and everything. And it would be not very smart to reduce the understanding of such a rich agency to the behavior of someone. That is my point of view. Of course, I have a personal opinion about that, but I cannot share it for obvious reasons.
Well, thank you very much, Cristina, for the discussion tonight. I think we've just come in on time.
Emma.
Yes, come on time. And thank you all for joining us for such a stimulating, provocative conversation. And I know that once you get back to Brazil, it might be much harder to keep in touch with you Cristina, but you might be coming back to Europe. I know you can't stay away from it. Just in closing, do let everybody know that about your exhibition in March. It's going to be back in Alicante, and it's going to be shown in a museum, and the catalogue is going to be produced by
my newspaper, the newspaper where I used to work. So I finally managed to have the pictures I like published in the newspaper.
That you worked for in 2008.
Years, make all these books so I could convince the director of my newspaper to publish the good pictures.
That's a real homecoming and a real celebration. Congratulations. Yes. And thank you everybody for joining us.
Yes,
good night.
It was great. Bye-bye.
Hi, sorry, I have a quick poll if you guys don't mind. Thank you, Cristina. Thank you, Brett, by the way. But I'll be in touch soon, but for those who are still here.
Can I leave now? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thanks everyone for joining us.
Nice to see you, Jasmine. Come in. That was good. Did you enjoy that, Jasmine? Yeah, she's on mute.
Oh yeah, I was chatting with her earlier. You were so good in the questions. Very natural.
Fine. Yeah, but I knew I also had to ask some difficult ones.
No,
But she's
I thought
fine
you
about
did it
that.
really well, and also, yeah, I thought you were just really good at thinking on your feet, because I've seen people really stumble because you're processing it as you're reading it.
Yeah.
But that was really good.
Yeah, no, I can do the chat, can't I? Except, you know, they're coming on so quickly, so you're in that part and you can't see the rest of them.
I know. What I've been doing with other
What do you
people
think?
once
Do you
in a
make it
while,
bigger or something?
it's a little bit tricky because no matter what, the speed.
Yeah.
So what I've been doing for people who can't manage the chat function is I created Google Doc that I edit.
That's better for me, but you can't.
No, it doesn't work for everyone.
I can't make it any bigger on the screen
You
because
may,
look.
like you can make the box bigger, but you can't make it
Oh,
pause. You
oh,
know.
no, that's better. But then I would only see, no, that'd be fine. I didn't know I could do that. Then I can see them because I thought I was missing some. I don't know how many I did, and I don't know.
Well, it's hard when you're looking at it and then other questions are coming up.
And of course, the trouble is you're supposed to be looking at her, you know. So
but
you
your
don't
eye contact was fine.
Okay, good. That's excellent. Well, of course, you know, you could tell from the beginning I enjoyed that. She's a dream to talk with. And
yeah, it was very generous, I think, between the two of you. It was nice before, and I really liked the orchid in the background too.
was it good in the end? Oh, that's good. I think Bindi would have been proud of me. Bindi was my secretary. Always said my room was such a mess.
No, it was. There was one point when I wanted to come in and remove the picture.
Oh,
but
please feel free to do that.
In the middle of the thing, I had people walking behind me.
I know. I saw Jason walking behind you.
No, it's not, but Joe felt embarrassed when he does.
Oh. But your part of that, yeah, everything you did was fine. Yeah, everything you did from there was fine.
So much easier than a laptop.
Yeah. That's right. You said how lovely it is to see everybody big.
No, but it was, and I can monitor and keep eye contact while looking at my notes. And you can use this more than it was so much easier. I had to turn my notes open and I have to.
Oh, I see, because you don't have a big screen.
No, when I use that on my laptop, the laptop is small, so I need to use an iPad. But if an iPad, well, that's what I talk into. So every time you see me, I'm using my iPad. But that's the only way that I can then check YouTube. Because that appears different. So I need to be able to see both Zoom, YouTube, and then I need to be able to see and talk to myself.
Right.
That's the iPad. And this is so much easier.
You don't need Andrew to give you a PC. No.
I needed to have the camera built in.
Yeah.
It was so much easier.
Oh, that's excellent. Good. What's your last one next week? What's the next one? Diana Marcosian, is she confirmed now? Oh, okay. Is Diana Marcosian on